Have you ever read a story a long time ago, loved it a lot, and decided you probably just don't want to read it again? For a variety of reasons. One of those reasons, perhaps, is that you're afraid if you read it a second time, it won't have that same type of positive effect on you as it did the first time. In my case, there's a story like that. That's the purpose of this video here today. This story has had such a profoundly positive effect on me years ago. I would say it's probably the best thing I've read in the last 10 years. I love it so much that everything else that I've read since then has been compared to it. And frankly, everything else I've read kind of pales in comparison to it. Now, I'm not a very voracious reader. I don't read a lot. I write more than I read. So my encyclopedia of fiction is very, very limited compared to a lot of people. But I have not read anything in the last 10 years that is better than Black God's Kiss, one of the Jirel of Joiry. Pretty sure it's Joiry. It's the first of the Jirel stories. We're just going to say Jirel because I can't even pronounce my own name half the time. Black God's Kiss, it just left a mark on me. I absolutely adore my remembrance of this story. It's been years and years and years since I've read it. So the purpose of this video today is to read it again and find out, is Black God's Kiss as good as I remember it being? But before I could answer that question, because it's wintertime and I keep my house at 60 degrees, I must first don my alternate cap and my burrito mantle. Yeah, yeah. Black God's Kiss is as good as I remember it the first time I read it. I had to change my shirt because I began this video with a bunch of silliness that the story doesn't deserve. This is a serious story with no goofiness, no silliness, no humor whatsoever. And that's one of the main reasons I love it so much. I got a lot of thoughts in my head. I was taking notes as I was reading it, jotting down some things that stood out to me. But I got to put a whole bunch of stuff together in my brain. Let me get back to you in a minute to kind of explain why this is still the best story I've read in the last 10 years. Okay, I'm going to try to be as succinct as I can in talking about this story because I really absolutely adore Black God's Kiss. This is, I just want to show you the book I'm reading from, first of all. This is C.L. Moore's complete collection of Jirel of Joiry stories. It needs to be said, because some of the things I'm going to talk about in regards to Black God's Kiss are remarkable because this story was written in the 1930s. This collection, this book has seen better days, but this is the publication from 1969. So Black God's Kiss was first published in 1934. I think it was in like Weird Tales or one of those sorts of publications. But this book is from 69, and it's fallen apart a little bit. There's a couple pages that are loose here and there. You can see what I mean. It's unfortunate, but it's more enjoyable reading from something that is kind of like an artifact like this. I almost feel like I should be wearing white gloves or something, reading from something this old and this fragile, I guess is the word to use. But anyways, this collection is good. I'm not talking about all the other stories in here. The criticism that a lot of people levy at C.L. Moore is that she kind of writes the same story over and over again. And to an extent, that's true. All of these Jirel stories, this is just my opinion. Like I said, I'm not a scholar and I don't read as much as most of the people that probably would be watching this video read. But she never uses the damn sword in the picture. I have gone on and on about how ridiculous the female warrior phenomena is. The whole Red Sonja craze and everything that came after that, and these barbarian women, it's just absurd to me. And it's not even absurd in an interesting way. It's absurd in that's silly. Get a grip, grow up kind of an extent. What makes this special, what makes these Jirel stories special, is that she is not a warrior woman. She is a leader of men. She has an arm. She's a military strategist and a military leader. But none of these stories get into any of that. These stories are all about her internal struggles. I mean, they're like nonstop introspection from start to finish. She goes on these spiritual, metaphysical, mental sort of journeys in the stories, and that's why so many people say that they're basically the same thing over and over again, and they kind of are, but it's a demonstration of what C.L. Moore as a first of all as a human, second of all as a female, but as a person was going through in the 1930s, discovering herself, discovering what makes her her. These are very autobiographical stories, in my opinion. C.L. Moore was not a military strategist either, but she was someone that admired intellectual. I don't know anything about her. So this is all speculation on my part. I know absolutely zero, but I could tell by reading these stories, as well as the science fiction that she had written after this. She's someone that admired intelligence in women, strength in women, but at the same time balancing that with the biological realities of being a woman. I'm going out on a limb saying that because I don't. Jirel doesn't have children in any of these stories. She's not. She's not a homesteader. You know, she's not a trad wife by any stretch of the imagination. Um, she often finds herself lonely and sad throughout the stories, and I think that Black God's Kiss is the best example of this exercise that C.L. Moore was exploring with these Jirel of Joiry stories. So here's some stuff I was writing down. I'm all right. I'm going to try. It's going to be impossible not to give spoilers about this. So I, as a reader myself, when I read something, I could care less if someone tells me how it ends. It never matters to me. Movies are the same way. I don't mind spoilers at all, but I know most people find them objectionable. I know that most people don't want to know the ending of something. It takes something away from the story. The thing with Black God's Kiss is this is a parable. I love the idea of a story that has meaning beyond its plot is critical to me. That's when I write, I try to write with that in mind. I consider a lot of the stuff that I write as somewhat of a parable, believe it or not. And Black God's Kiss is 100% a parable. So it's not like it's going to rob you of what you're going to learn about the meaning behind the story by just knowing the plot and what happens. So, but if you don't want to know even the facts of what takes place in the story, then just turn off this video and go watch something else. I won't be upset at you. I won't hold it against you. So things I noticed. So this Jirel, like I said, is a military leader. She has a castle. She has people below her, and Guillerme, Guillerme. I can't. Please forgive me, people. I can't even pronounce my own name half the time. The antagonist of the story, Guillerme. I'm saying his name like that, Guillerme. I don't speak French. I would like to be able to speak French, but I don't speak French. He and his army invades her castle and basically wins. He conquers her men and he takes her prisoner, and she loses. She loses to this man that is described throughout the beginning of the story as a complete villain. Like she speaks of nothing but hatred for him because he won. He conquered her people. He conquered her castle. The best people, I'm saying in real life, not in stories, but this story mirrors real life in a lot of ways. The best people want someone better than themselves. I think that goes without saying for both men and women. If you're a man, you want a partner that is better than you, especially in the areas where you are lacking. You fill each other's voids, right? I think that that's true for the best of men. A lot of men deny that, but I think it's true for the best of men. It is true for all women. Not even the worst of women want someone better than them. And this story is very much about that. The fact that Guillerme conquered Jirel's castle and basically subjugated her, put her into a dungeon in the basement of her own castle. That is what spawned her love for this invading man. This is not a rape fantasy. I'm going to say that right off the bat too. I've heard people talk about Black God's Kiss as if it is a rape fantasy. It is not. It is not. I don't even know that there is such a thing as a rape fantasy, because if Guillerme were to be forward with Jirel, it would not be rape in Jirel's mind, because she's madly in love with this man. So it wouldn't be rape. She goes into, she escapes from the dungeon that he puts her in, and she goes into this underground tunnel below the castle that her and this priest named Ricky Gervais. It's not Ricky Gervais, but the guy's name is literally Gervais in the thing, which is wonderful. Ricky Gervais is half Native American, by the way. He, his dad was Native American and French Canadian, and then his mom was British. So he's a quarter Native American, I suppose. But I think that's just something I meant. I don't even know why I told you that. I'm a big fan of Ricky Gervais. I guess that's why I told you that. Anyways, as she's voyaging down in this underground tunnel that leads into another world below the castle. It's a secretive, devilish place. It's not hell, but it is like akin to hell. It is like something that would be like a parallel of hell. But in many ways, it's described as being even worse than hell. As she's going down this thing, she just can't stop thinking about this man. So when he captures her, he plants a kiss on her lips, and that sticks with her. That's where she starts to hate him. But the more she thinks about him, as she's going down into this underground tunnel, she's going in this underground tunnel to retrieve a weapon. That is the only weapon that could possibly defeat Guillerme, and the only thing that could bring salvation to her people and her castle and her land is to get this weapon from this netherworld. We're just going to call it a netherworld. But the whole time she's going down there to get it, she can't stop thinking about this man's strong arms, how he was towering over top of her, and the kiss that he planted on her lips. The way that C.L. Moore describes Jirel's voyage in Black God's Kiss, as well as in many other stories that she's written, is just absolutely divine as far as I'm concerned. You could turn to any page and you would just pick up something, any random paragraph. To me, it's just like jaw-droppingly imaginative the way she writes. She writes with just enough detail that, here, I'll show you. I'll prove it to you. Okay, we'll pick right here. What do we got? She had half expected, despite her brave words, to come upon the storied and familiar red-hot pave of hell, and this pleasant, starlit land surprised her and made her more wary. The things that built the tunnel could not have been human. She had no right to expect men here. She was a little stunned by finding open skies so far underground, though she was intelligent enough to realize that, however she had come, she was not underground now. So, twisting reality, the journey underground leading to a place that is very clearly not underground. No cavity in the earth could contain the starry sky. She came of a credulous age, and she accepted her surroundings without too much questioning, though she was a little disappointed in the truth were known, in the pleasantness of this mistily starlit place. The fiery streets of hell would have been a likelier locality in which to find the weapon against Guillerme. That's how that man's name is spelled. Incarnate light behaving like water. So she has this way with light throughout her stories, where light, like in this case in this tower, she's describing this light as a structure made out of light. The light cannot be penetrated. It is solid, and yet it is in fact light, which is something that is obviously not solid. Even if you disagree with my assessment of what this story is about, if you just value describing something with just enough detail to give you a sense of what it is, but not too much detail where the author spends a page talking about every nook and cranny of something that's in the character's surroundings. This is the kind of descriptive prose that absolutely sparks the imagination. All right, so she goes down this spiral, and the spiral is described as being a spiral of unreal angles. There's a whole idea of something. A friend of mine, Matthew Knight, is, I guess you could say he's a bit of a scholar on the whole concept of sacred geometry. It's, from what I understand, and again, I'm not the best person to describe this, but it is that certain shapes and certain intersections of lines and curvatures create a meaning beyond just their physical outline, if that makes any sense. Even the way C.L. Moore describes the angles of the spiral going down and down further and further, it is like the image of that spiral has some sort of spiritual resonance to it. And it is that resonance which allows her to transport herself from the basement of her castle into this other world, into this land with a starry sky that is very clearly underground. She describes Jirel as being transformed from this mighty like warrior queen, so to speak, to just a simple frightened girl as she explores the tunnel that she goes down. She has to go down this tunnel like on her belly with her feet first, so she can't even see where she's going. It's really, really just a cool thing. And this, when as she's going down into this tunnel and being transported into this other world, this is where epiphany begins to happen with Jirel. She denies it, but she at least accepts the fact that she is fearful and she is afraid of what she's about to do. She's prior to going into this tunnel, she was a fearless woman. She had this guise of her like this because she is just so reluctant to open up her heart to anything. She is just stone cold. But she becomes a frightened girl as she goes into this netherworld. I mentioned earlier this incarnate light behaving like water. I think that's just a beautiful way to describe this edifice that she comes upon. She sees within this tower, basically, that's out in the middle of this bizarre land. She confronts herself. So she sees an image of herself in like inside a sphere within this tower. This tower is made of incarnate light that behaves like water, like it moves like water up and down the sides of the tower. She asks herself in this tower, where is the weapon in this land that I can use to defeat Garolame? And that's where herself, this image of herself, tells her to seek the black god. Because this is something that when I read it the first time, I didn't catch this. But reading it the second time, again, it's been years since I read this. It really stood out to me. Okay, so this is where she confronts her image of herself in the tower, okay? Jirel was speaking to herself inside this sphere. I seek a weapon, she said, a weapon against a man I so hate that upon earth there is none terrible enough for my need. Meaning the weapon is the worst weapon possible would still be not bad enough to get revenge on Garolame. So herself asks Jirel, you so hate him, eh? Mused the voice in a very casual manner. With all my heart. That line right there I didn't catch the first time. With all your heart, echoed the voice. And there was an undernote of laughter in it that she did not understand. The echoes of that mirth ran around and round the great globe, the globe meaning the sphere that they were within. Jirel felt her cheeks burn with resentment against some implication in the derision which she could not put a name to. When the echoes of the laugh had faded, the voice said indifferently, give the man what you find at the Black Temple in the lake. I make you a gift of it. So why is this important? Who hates somebody with their heart? No, you don't hate with your heart. The heart is, you would say, I love him with all my heart. You would never say, I hate him with all my heart. When she confesses this to herself, the vision of herself in this tower, it's like a slip to say that she hates him with her heart, and herself realized that. This encounter with herself is almost like an introspective confrontation with herself. As this whole story is, as most of these Jirel stories actually are. Look at this, I'm losing more pages in this thing. The fact that she hates him with her heart, though, that's the reveal that I didn't catch the first time. She's obviously saying that she wants to kill this man because she loves him with all her heart. So essentially, she finds this lake in this land, and there's a temple in the center of the lake across this very narrow, straight bridge that she has to walk across. And there's stars inside the lake. And C.O. Moore describes things falling from the sky and landing in the lake, making ripples, but ripples that whisper to her when they hit the water and radiate out. I thought that was a really cool detail. Again, it goes back to attributing a quality, a tangible quality to something that's intangible. The ripples whispering to Jirel is a beautiful detail. Again, it's just one of the million things in this story, as with many of these Jirel stories, where she describes something to behave in a way that makes no sense in our reality. But at the same time is poetic and beautiful. Okay, so the spoiler of spoilers is what happens at the end of the story. She goes into this temple and she finds an image. It's kind of like a statue, but it's really described as an image. Again, it's something that's tangible and intangible at the same time, of like a one-eyed, not a cyclops from mythology, but a one-eyed figure. It's an androgynous figure too, which is also bizarre. And it's outstretched with its lips puckered like it's awaiting to be kissed. And somehow she just knows that this is what she must do. So she kisses this statue. And when she kisses this statue, she is gifted the weapon that will kill Guillerme. And she holds it within herself. And then there's a couple pages of her feeling the weight, the despair that is within her, knowing that she has this weapon inside her as she runs out of the temple, runs back across the meadow, finds the cave entrance, picks up her crucifix, puts it back on, and then goes up this passageway, the spiral, all the way back up to the basement of her castle. When she gets to the basement of the castle, that's where Gervais is waiting for her, but he's not waiting alone. He's waiting with Guillerme and all of Guillerme's troops. And she knows what she must do. So she runs across the room that they're in and plants this kiss on Guillerme's lips. And he accepts it. He puts his arms around her, and the kiss destroys him. And she describes in great detail the way that he stiffens and dies and flips back on his back. And that's pretty much how the story ends. So what is this? Why is this so poetic of a story? I told you earlier on, this was written in the 1930s. This story is really symbolic of the struggle that the modern feminist deals with. And I don't know how that's even deniable. I think even if a feminist were to read this story, and I think that might even be part of the reason why, like, we've seen the movie about Red Sonja, and I think a couple other things, and there's been a whole bunch of more Red Sonja stuff written, but C.L. Moore never got like a lot of recognition or a lot of attention in the 70s and 80s and so forth, when the whole like Conan thing was having a resurgence and all of that. When fantasy was big again, like, I just think that a lot of people that read this that were of that feminist persuasion kind of were smart enough to read between the lines and say this kind of is against the things that we pretend to find important in life, the goals that we want other women to adhere to. Jirel never wanted to be this image that you see on the book of this woman holding a sword that's almost as long as her, with these Madonna-style cones on her breasts and the Viking helmet with the horns on it. She never wanted to be that in life. That path was open to her and she walked down it. But the entire time that she was becoming the woman that you see on this cover, she knew that this was not who she was, and this was not what she wanted all along. And it took a man that was better than her at this sort of thing, at being the conqueror, at being the military strategist, at being ruthless, at being a man. It took a man that was a man's man to set her straight and help her realize that no, this whole thing that she was pursuing was a farce. And she fell in love with the man that was better than her. And when she killed the man by delivering the kiss, she was more alone than she was ever. At the end of the story, she falls on top of his corpse and weeps because she realizes that her whole life was a sham. Like, pursuing this image of her, this was never her. This was just the guise. When she's transporting herself down into this netherworld and she becomes this frightened girl, that's the true Jirel. That is the real Jirel. This was never her, and she realizes that. And the one man that could have brought her happiness, she condemned. The one man that could have given her some sort of like living salvation on earth, she destroyed. And it was like the ideology of all this is what ultimately killed her. This is a parable that helps explain why the modern feminist is utterly miserable and sad. It doesn't mean that women are miserable or sad. And it doesn't mean that a woman has to be some sort of trad wife, that she has to be Little House on the Prairie. None of that. I'm not advocating any of that. I'm just advocating that the guise that feminists put on to appear powerful, to appear that they're in control, is just that. It's just the guise. And deep down inside, they're absolutely miserable and sick of themselves. And all they really want is for a man to straighten them out. So yeah, I wasn't sure when I read this years ago if I just imagined all of that undertow of the story, but I didn't imagine it. It's really there. That is the heart of Black God's Kiss. And it absolutely is just as good now as it was when I read it years ago. And I can't think of anything I enjoy more from the last 10 years of things I've read than Black God's Kiss by C.L. Moore. I read more than 10 years ago, I read Robert E. Howard, and Solomon Kane has also a very similar sort of impression on me. But this is more recent. I read Solomon Kane more than 10 years ago. Same thing with Carl Edward Wagner's Kane stories. Just Kane makes me think of other Kanes. Carl Edward Wagner's stories also have meaning behind them. They're not just shallow romps. There's depth to those stories. And Kane, his protagonist, is very introspective and thoughtful, and all that's reflected in the meaning behind those stories as well. So that's why this one really just struck a nerve with me, because there's not a lot like that. I'm not a huge fan of like fantasy and sword and sorcery because most of it to me feels shallow. Black God's Kiss is anything but shallow. It's heavy. It's a very, very heavy story. And I think it's even more poignant. I guess I'll use a French word to describe the story. It's more poignant today than it was in the 1930s when it was written. Jeepers Creepers. Why are you even watching this? I probably annoyed you, and this video has got to be very, very long. And I told you a while ago that I was going to try to be succinct, and I haven't been succinct. So why don't I just, I told you what I think about the story. I told you why I like it. I told you it holds up. I gave away the ending. So if you were annoyed by the fact that I did that and you're still watching this, maybe you're just watching me out of spite now. Maybe that's what it is. Spite's a good motivator. So, and that ties into the story. Spite motivated her, Jirel, to realize her own shortcomings and the fact that her whole life was a sham. A bitter pill to swallow, I think, and a sad pill, a tragic ending to the story, but only for Jirel, a fictional character. If you are a woman watching this story, maybe you could, if you are a woman reading this book, maybe you will learn from Jirel's folly and make different decisions that will bring you happiness. Probably not. No women are watching this video. Who am I kidding? Anyways, I don't know what else to say. I'm just going to press the button. Bye.